The next episode of Nerd, Flicks, and Chill will start in
3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everybody, this is Nick,
and this is Carrie.
and we are Nerd, Flicks, and Chill, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Game of Thrones. We're going to get back into everybody's favorite show, or at least my favorite show. I don't know if it's your favorite show or not, but I know I love it.
I love it too. It is definitely one of the shows that I, even after the season is done, I still want to talk about it. And we've even done kind of a preview of predictions into season 7, and I'm still coming up with new stuff. So, yeah, on that alone, it's probably one of my favorite shows too.
Yeah, and we're going to be checking in with Game of Thrones from time to time just to kind of keep everybody up to speed on what's going on with the show for season 7. And we also wanted to talk today about the Emmy nominations that are out because Game of Thrones did come up with 23 Emmy nominations, leading the way, once again showing how this show is transcending television. It's doing something completely new, and it's definitely being recognized for it. Again, leading the way in nominations for the second straight year.
You know, I want to interrupt you for just a second and kind of change the subject for just a moment. I want to call attention to and thank everyone who has supported us and who has been listening to us. We're only a couple episodes in, and our listenership has grown, and I think we've been listened to and downloaded in 30 countries now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the it's 29 and then some.
And then, yeah, there's some that says other areas, so I don't know what that composes, so I will count that.
The disputed territories.
So, no, I just want to thank you guys so much, and I want to have a call to action. If you are listening, if you have listened, even if this is your first time listening, if you like what you hear, if you like what you've heard, if you want to hear more, it would really, really help us out if you could take just a moment and give us a rating, especially if you're listening on iTunes, if you're listening on Stitcher, if you happen to listen to us on YouTube. Did you know that we upload our audio to YouTube? That way, if you can't listen on iTunes or Stitcher for some reason, we've got you covered. We've got you on YouTube as well. Give us a rating on there. That's really going to help us. And it will help us reach more listeners because it will allow our show to show up in more searches. And if you want to go one step further, write a review. Tell us what you like. Join our Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter. But we really need to get some more ratings in there and some reviews, and that would really, really help us immensely. And I want to thank you in advance for doing that. And now back to Nick.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself.
You probably could have. But
I don't know. You did very well. You did very well.
Well, thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about the Emmys with all the different stuff Game of Thrones was nominated for. Of course, it did get nominated for Outstanding Drama Series. A lot of great shows got nominated. The Americans, Better Call Saul, which I love, Downton Abbey, Homeland, House of Cards, and Mr. Robot, which I also love, all nominated for drama series along with Game of Thrones. So that'll be a pretty tough category for Game of Thrones. But to me, this was their strongest season yet, so I kind of have a feeling they're going to win.
You know, I do too. I think all of the races that the show has been nominated in are going to be, or all of the categories that the show has been nominated in are going to be very, very close and very tight because this is something that we had mentioned before, and I think these Emmy nominations that came out are, paramount of that television is really going through a renaissance right now. Things that we're seeing on television are rivaling that you would go to your local theater and see, whether it be the scripting, whether it be the cinematography, whether it be the acting, the directing. all of it is, and budget, is all on the level of a full theatrical production. And that never really used to be the case. It used to be kind of TV was down here, and then they would hopefully aspire to be in a film. And now we have people that have directed and produced and starred in films that are wanting to come and get these roles on television, because that's where the good stuff is right now. It just seems it's a lot of popcorn fare at the theater, and your really good nitty gritty roles are on TV. And my goodness, how many good roles are we seeing that are being recognized in this Emmy season? It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that underscores that point is there's a category called Outstanding Actor in a Limited Series or Movie, and that's an Emmy category. And you look at all the different actors that are nominated in just that one category, you have like 4 people who have been nominated for Oscars in one Emmy category: Bryan Cranston, Benedict Cumberbatch, Idris Elba, Cuba Gooding Jr. And they're also joined by Tom Hiddleston and Courtney B. Vance. So, I mean, what you're saying is 100% correct. And, actors are flocking to television now to get these good roles on these, limited series or these movie series that they're doing on TV now. And it's really showing how the balance of power is shifting. I mean, binge watching TV shows is becoming more enjoyable than going to the movies, because you're just not getting a whole lot of creativity in the theaters right now. We just did an entire episode with the remakes and sequels and reboots and all that other stuff that's out there. And I think this is really kind of showing how that balance of power is shifting.
Well, and I think also when you're talking about serial television, it's giving your writers and your actors, good meat to sink their teeth into, and a longer amount of time to be able to fully realize those stories or those characters more than you can in a movie, where we were getting into a time, it was very common that most movies that you would see in the theaters are getting up over 3 hours long. And a lot of people don't have time or don't want to go to the movies for that amount of time. And it seems now a lot of movies are getting shorter and shorter, again, hovering around that sweet spot of an hour and a half, 2 hours. With a lot of TV shows, that's 1-2 episodes. And if you're doing a whole season, you're looking at 4 times that amount to be able to really go in and explore a character or a situation or a group of characters. And it gives them the ability to really stretch their wings and let that creativity flow.
Yeah, and there's not as much like episodic confinement in television anymore. It used to be like there were shows that were on and you would watch them, and they have a certain action beat here, and then the denouement is here, and the last 5 minutes set up the next episode, and it was like your villain of the week or issue of the week that you handled. But now you have shows that are doing these season long narrative arcs that are more theatric, like Game of Thrones is what that does, and Better Call Saul, and Mr. Robot again. So it's also just the quality of TV is just getting much better. So a lot of great stuff out there. And if you guys haven't watched Mr. Robot yet, man, that show's so cool.
It is good.
And Better Call Saul. Whew.
Yeah.
Those are good shows.
Both of which were recognized. So, yeah, let's look at specifically some of these races, especially Game of Thrones really killing it in the acting and production categories. I mean, it's going to be really difficult, especially where you have Game of Thrones nominated multiple times within the same category. I don't know how the Academy is going to choose, because these are really, really tough decisions.
Well, and the thing about Game of Thrones that you guys always have to remember too is that it's an ensemble piece. So you're really never going to see a lead actor nomination for anybody on the show. It'll always come in the form of supporting actors and actresses. That's just the way that ensemble pieces work. And the nominations in the acting categories for Game of Thrones all came in those supporting categories. So I think it's probably a good idea to start with the ladies because it was a great season for the ladies of Game of Thrones, and three of the actresses in Game of Thrones got nominated for Outstanding Supporting Actress: Amelia Clark, Lena Headey, and Maisie Williams.
I really, really think this is going to be Lena Headey's. I love that Maisie Williams was recognized. However, I think this season was probably the weakest for her, not due to her performance by any means. I just don't think she was given enough to really work with. I think her storyline wasn't as strong, but oh my gosh, the talking about having meat to sink your teeth into, Lena Headey had so much to work with this season. So I'm gonna say that she's gonna end up taking it home.
Yeah, I don't even think it's close. I don't think the other two ladies on the show are wonderful. You know, Amelia Clark is a great Daenerys, and Maisie is a great Arya. But watching Cersei's descent into madness was awesome, and that's been true of the last two seasons as well. I mean, if you look at her arc through seasons 5 and 6, it's been amazing to watch her do her thing. So, I fully expect her to kind of run away with that. Maggie Smith is also nominated, and she's wonderful always. Maura Tierney and Constance Zimmer are the other actresses nominated there. This just feels like a Lena Headey year.
Agreed.
And then when we look over at the gentlemen, at the supporting actors, we've got two actors nominated from the show. Peter Dinklage again, and he gets nominated every year, and then Kit Harington is finally in there. Exciting to see Kit Harington finally get recognized for his acting.
It is, even though I happen to make fun of his acting this season. I believe I compared his acting for a good part of the season to a bowl of bland oatmeal. It was a little one note for me. As far as Peter Dinklage, he is outstanding as Tyrion. However, much like with Maisie Williams as Arya, I don't think this was a really strong season for him. There was one really incredibly strong scene that he had, the one where he released the dragons. I don't know why Clash of the Titans released the Kraken just came to my head. But where he, released the dragons, and that scene was so incredible and so incredibly acted. And especially when you go and watch the behind the scenes section or the behind the scenes featurette, where you see that he's basically emoting and giving his all to a lump of foam and a guy holding a tennis ball. And then he's getting such a range of emotions, it makes you appreciate what he did even more. But I don't know if they are going to award an award for a single scene within an entire season. Now, Kit Harington, like I said, I thought much of his performance was very one note and kind of boring. However, there were a couple of episodes, especially the one where he was actually, I guess it was the one after he was resurrected, because he was resurrected at the very end of the episode. So it was the very next episode where he was dealing with that and the consequences and everything that happened, I thought was so well done. And then, of course, his portrayal and fighting and everything in the Battle of the Bastards was fantastic. So I think Kit Harington kind of edges out Peter Dinklage just a little bit. And I know originally I was going with Peter Dinklage because I love that dragon scene so much. But yeah, between, the couple episodes that I think Kit Harington did really well and that one scene that Peter did, I think I'm going to edge it out to Kit Harington.
Oh, I don't even think Peter Dinklage should be nominated this year.
Yeah.
I mean, he had two great scenes and a bunch of eunuch jokes in the middle. This
Yeah.
was, I think the maybe the least enjoyable season if you're a Tyrion fan for that character.
You
And
know,
I think you have I think if you're a viewer, you have every right to kind of question what his arc as a character is because since the end of season 2, we're not getting a whole lot from him. I mean, we got some really great stuff in season 4, but the character arc has been a little bit stalled out ever since then. I mean, there was some cool stuff that's happened along the way. He's had his little moments, but the overall arc of his character, I think maybe in the finale of season 6, we started to see some change happening there. And so I think that's a little bit of hope that you can have. But I got a lot of questions about what they've been doing with Tyrion's character.
well, he doesn't have any conflict right now. And I think that's where his character really shines is when he's dealing with some kind of adversity and conflict. Right now, as of late, he's been kind of holding down the fort. He's been trying to get a rise out of two people that have the personality of lint, and trying to get them to tell a joke. And, he didn't really have much to do. So, and now he's just kind of in servitude to the queen. I'm sure there's going to be some conflict that, drums up next season, but I think we have seen the best moments of his character. Now, I will say this, I think it's a damn shame that the actor who plays Davos was not recognized.
Yeah, I think they could have swapped out Liam Cunningham and Peter Dinklage this year for sure.
Yeah. Because his performance was so strong. He had a couple of good monologues this season. I mean, especially the standout for me was that scene between him and Kit Harington and the actress that plays Melisandre. Again, me being bad at names, I can't think of her name right now. That scene was so strong and moved me to tears with how much restraint and fierceness he was able to show within that monologue. So I think it's a shame that he was not recognized.
I love seeing Kit Harington get a nomination. I would have really liked seeing Liam Cunningham get nominated. I don't know that either of them are going to beat Jonathan Banks from Better Call Saul. I love the Mike Ehrmantraut character.
Yeah.
He was so good this season in particular. I almost feel like he's going to be kind of a shoe-in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. He is one of my favorite characters on that show and from Breaking Bad as well. So, and I would just love to see him get up on stage and to see him as himself. And anytime he's in a scene, I just absolutely love it. So, yeah, I would like to see him recognized as well.
Well, it's always great whenever you see an interview with Jonathan Banks and how kind of soft-spoken he is as opposed to the characters that he plays that are a lot more like rough around the edges. But he himself always comes off as just this very soft-spoken, very gentlemanly person. So it's always really cool to see him do his interviews and stuff.
Yeah, and I would love to see him kind of on the spot and quite literally in the spotlight up on the stage. Sometimes that's when you get the most genuine look at somebody, not when they're being interviewed on a show, and because a lot of times that's rehearsed and pre-planned ahead of time, so it's not entirely candid. But, when you have an acceptance speech like that, especially if it's something you're not expecting or weren't preparing for, sometimes you just get those really wonderful, candid, genuine moments, and I would love to see that from him.
I think one of the categories that's a real shoe-in, like to me it's the most predictable one on the board, is outstanding directing for a drama series. There's nobody that's going to beat Miguel Sapochnik in the Battle of the Bastards.
I will be shocked. I will be absolutely shocked if he does not take home the award for this.
It's the most ambitious hour of television I think I've ever seen from a director standpoint. I mean, just the fact that, if anybody's watched the Anatomy of a Scene videos that HBO puts out, they did one for Battle of the Bastards, and you would not believe the amount of, work and effort that went into it. I mean, I've said it before, but that shot of, Jon Snow when he pulls out his sword and he's got all those riders that are
Oh,
coming at him, that's a real
fantastic.
shot. That's
Yeah.
40 guys on horseback riding at Kit Harington. It's just so cool. I mean, it's such an ambitious, well directed episode, and there's a lot of great directors' choices that are made in there. He's also being challenged by Jack Bender, who's also a great director, and he did the episode called The Door, which was where we learned all about Hodor this season.
Fantastic episode, definitely. But, I really think the Battle of the Bastards could rival just about anything that you would see in the theater. Again, I think it really set the bar for television as a whole. And, when we recorded our review of that episode, there were two words that you used that I think made it a complete shoo-in, and you described it as game-changing. And to me, I think it would be an incredible disservice to have it not be recognized, and I would be very shocked if it's not.
There's a couple of other strong shows that are in there. There's an episode of Downton Abbey, Homeland, The Nick, and Ray Donovan that are all, but I just don't see anything topping Battle of the Bastards. I actually watched it again recently. I noticed a really cool little detail is, how they have that guy on horseback running at John,
Yeah.
and he like knocks him off his horse with his sword.
Yes.
One of the cool things about that shot is, one, it's real. It's actually an actual guy on a horse that Kit Harington knocks off the horse. It's not a CGI effect at all, which is amazing. But the other really cool thing about that scene is, we've heard about Valerian steel and
Yeah.
its importance. That guy on horseback, his sword shatters
Yeah.
when it makes contact with John's sword. We also saw that happen last season, I think, with Brienne's sword as well, where she was able to cut right through somebody's blade, which is just kind of a really great little detail that lets you know the kind of weapons that these guys have and the severity of them.
I am so psyched for next season, and I can't believe it's a year away.
Yeah,
Ugh.
there was also a writing nomination too for Battle of the Bastards. That's the one they really kind of sunk their teeth into as
Yeah.
far as the one they wanted to promote. Although you can make the argument that The Winds of Winter is just as good, maybe even better. I don't know. I see those two episodes as like one thing.
I do too, actually. I mean, both of them were directed by Miguel Sapochnik, so they do have that same feel to them. But yeah, I do see them kind of as a package deal. And I mean, Winds of Winter was that nominated for anything, or did they just strictly stick with?
Nope, they stuck with Battle of the Bastards
Hmm.
as being the one they wanted to enter.
Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of recommend for anybody that is interested in kind of getting a little extra Game of Thrones content, the YouTube channel New Rockstars, they do really great recaps of the episodes. And they did some really good ones for the Battle of the Bastards and the Winds of Winter, where they talk about some of those things too. A lot of really great stuff that they bring up. They do this awesome breakdown of the music in the finale
Yeah.
and the way certain musical cues show how close certain characters are to death. But they also show how the Battle of the Bastards and the Winds of Winter are very much kind of tied into the other two episodes Miguel Sapochnik directed in season 5 called The Gift and Hard Home. And when you look at it, like, they really are mirror images of each other, and they do a great job in those videos of kind of pointing out all those different kind of similarities and story threads that get introduced in one and resolved in the other.
I agree. And, not to toot our own horn, but toot Dude, I know that we're very green and, I would like to think that we are an up and coming podcast, and to know that there are some heavy hitters like New Rock Stars, like Alt Shift X, like Smokescreen, some of our favorites that we like to listen to. I have to say, I'm kind of impressed that there are some observations and there are some parallels and some things that they saw in those episodes that we saw as well.
And some things that nobody's talked about yet, like Tommen's lion necklace. We're still the only ones that have talked about that.
You're right. I have not heard anybody else, even just to point it out, even just to we actually went into why we thought that was, but I haven't even heard anybody else mention it. So if you have heard somebody else mention it, and you're listening to this and you're like, but I heard so-and-so on this podcast or this video mention Tommen's lion necklace, let us know, because I want to hear it too. I want to hear what somebody else has to say about it, because we are also fans of other podcasts and YouTube Game of Thrones stuff. So we're not in competition. We want to support the other ones as well, especially if they are as good as we think we are.
Exactly.
That's right.
Again, you said it better than I ever could.
Oh, well, thank you. You flatter me. So what else
do we
have?
For the Emmys, just a lot of great stuff. I mean, I don't want to get into every category that's in there that Game of Thrones is up for. There's a lot of technical ones in there, too. The one that was the most confusing to me was the one for musical composition, because Ramin Djawadi did not get nominated for his work. And I've been trying to read a little bit about it, and I don't know if it's for some odd reason that he doesn't qualify, or if they just didn't submit his work for a specific episode, or it doesn't necessarily count as original because the themes are, derivative of other themes that he wrote in previous seasons. I don't really know. All I know is the music for Game of Thrones is amazing. This season in particular, he might not get any awards for it from the Emmys, but I can tell you that it's some of the best music for a TV show that I've ever heard in my life.
Oh yeah, especially, Winds of Winter episode alone is just absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I don't think I've ever purchased a soundtrack from a TV show before, but I did for this one. For this season specifically. Because
most
of those
TV
tracks.
Most TV show soundtracks kind of feel like they don't have that big orchestral John Williams feel. You feel like it's like one talented composer in a room who can play, 40 instruments and is really putting it together himself.
Or they're just on a keyboard and they're just playing
like
chords.
It feels more contained. Yeah, like the character in Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Yes. Exactly.
But yeah, ominous tones. But this is as good as what you'll hear in any film soundtrack, and I think Ramin Djawadi is going to be one of those guys who's going to be one of the next great composers. Because sad to think about it, because John Williams will not be around forever. The guy's in his mid-80s, and you got to wonder who's going to carry the ball moving forward. And you got guys like Michael Giacchino and Ramin Djawadi, hopefully too, that'll be those next great generation of composers that are there.
Yeah, I don't know the details. Like you've done some more research than I have as to why he would possibly not be nominated, because that was one of the glaring omissions from the Emmys that I was shocked that he was not nominated for. Now, if it's some kind of a technicality thing because he's using repetitive themes from past seasons or something, I don't know any of those technicalities, but I was shocked by it. And I will say, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or jumping out or whatnot, but since I'm already talking about shocking omissions, I'm really shocked. This has nothing to do with Game of Thrones, but I'm really, really shocked that Daredevil was not nominated for more. I thought season 2 of Daredevil was absolutely fantastic. I mean, in my opinion, much like Game of Thrones, I think this last season of Daredevil was game changing when it comes to original content on a streaming service. Just some of the best that I have seen. And I think the only thing that it got nominated for was for editing, which, the editing was wonderful. But I think as far as stunts, the stunt choreography, the lighting, the sound, so many of the technical aspects of that show were just fantastic. And even the effects, makeup effects and whatnot, because there were a lot of really brutal fight scenes in this season. And I'm shocked that it didn't receive more recognition.
I'm a little surprised that we don't get more recognition, and not just here in the Emmys, but like in any award show, that we don't get more recognition for casting directors. 'Cause, man, casting directors make all the difference in the world.
That's true. Very true.
Like the casting director for Game of Thrones was also the casting director for The Force Awakens, which you could probably tell because there's a lot of familiar names that pop in there between the two. Um, but you look at like all the work that a casting director does in terms of getting those right people in those right roles, and it can make or break a project.
That's very true. And I do,
You know,
I really enjoyed seeing The Force Awakens and seeing lots of little Game of Thrones cameos sprinkled throughout. And I kind of hope that we see more of that in the future Star Wars movies that are to come.
I agree. I mean, you look at shows like House of Cards. Like, I don't love House of Cards. I actually don't think House of Cards is a really good show. The first season I thought was okay. The second and third seasons they just weren't very good. It's kind of like it's just overly melodramatic, and I don't know. This story just doesn't work for me. But what does make the show kind of have legs is the fact that the casting director was able to get Robin Wright and Kevin Spacey, because they make that show work. Without them, it would be hard to take it seriously.
Yeah, that's true. I tried that show, and for whatever reason, it just never stuck with me. I don't know why, and I can't really put my finger on it, but I don't think I made it past episode 2 of that. And I had a lot of friends that were really, really raving about it, and I'm really picky when it comes to TV shows. I will watch something, and within 2 episodes, if it hasn't hooked me, then I'm not moving on to number 3 or 4 or anything beyond that. And it's very rare. The one exception of a show that I watched that I did not get into, but I stuck with it because of the urging of many, many, many people, and I'm glad that I did, but it's my one exception, was Doctor Who. It was really hard for me to get into it, but I'm glad I did, because there's some pretty amazing stuff. But I'm totally derailing what we're talking about. But Game of Thrones, Emmys, please.
Yeah, so that's really all I had with regards to just the Emmys. I
Yeah.
think they are September 18th this year, so we'll see how they do. I think they should do pretty well. Now, this also ties into the fact that 2016, they're going to be nominated for 23 Emmys, right?
Yeah.
But in 2017, they're going to be nominated for exactly 0 Emmys. Game of Thrones is not eligible for the Emmys in 2017.
Oh, that's because the season is going to be starting so late.
Yeah, that takes us into our other little bit of
Oh,
news that we've gotten over
man.
the last couple weeks.
I didn't even think
So,
about that.
yeah, we got the confirmation that season 7 will be a shorter season, only 7 episodes. So it'll be a 7-episode season, and then on top of that, it's actually going to premiere later into the summer. So they haven't set the date yet, but summer would generally mean probably where the season usually ends. About that time of year is where they would pick up, which is going to be after the Emmys cutoff time. So there will be a hiatus at the Emmys for Game of Thrones next season.
Oh man, I did not even think about that. It didn't even occur to me.
yeah, the reason that this is going down this way is because the showrunners, the Double D's, they need winter. Winter is here, so they need bad weather to be able to shoot. So they need to now wait around for the weather to turn a little bit, so it's pushed back their filming, which pushes back the post production process, and will in turn affect the season 7 premiere date. So maybe end of June, maybe July.
I gotta say something here. Do you really buy that excuse? Because I don't.
It depends.
I don't buy it
because
I don't.
I've got some other stuff coming up a little bit later that might tie into it.
So this is why I don't buy it. Because that's been the excuse that they've said, is because we need to have bad weather. Okay. However, almost every single frame of the show is manipulated in some way. And you can go and watch any of those behind the scenes featurettes, especially the effects ones, and you can see where they've had a lot of days that are, not so gloomy or kind of sunny or, whatever, and they make it look even darker. So what's a couple slides down further on your color scope? So I don't understand. They're not everything is going to be an exterior shot. They're going to be doing interiors as well. And a lot of the stuff, snow things that they've had, at the wall, or with some of the Night's King stuff when they were, fighting at the weirwood tree, at the Three-Eyed Raven's cave. Those were all shot in a soundstage. They're not shooting outside. So for them to say that they are delaying the season because they need to actually, for real, have bad weather, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, but they still need to have real locations, and they need to have...
Of course they do, and they do now. And like I said, they take what might be an overcast day or, whatever, and they can, change the color on it. I mean, they manipulate the color and the scenery and the setting almost 100% anyway. They're already going to be touching it and manipulating it. So why not? I mean, yeah, I understand if you're having to add like actual falling snow into every single scene. But like I said, they are digitally touching every single frame as it is now. So what is the difference between having a couple shades higher on your color scale? You know what I mean?
Well, I think authenticity.
Yeah, no. No, I don't buy it.
Okay, so then offer the contrasting theory. Give me the Game of Thrones conspiracy theory.
Oh, why? Well, maybe they're waiting for Melisandre, the actress that plays Melisandre, to pop out her baby. Maybe there's some kind of a scheduling conflict. Maybe there's something that they are... I don't know. Maybe there's somebody that they really want or really need to have this season, and they're not available until later. Maybe there's a location that they have scouted and they want this location, but for whatever reason, there's something going on and there's some kind of conflict with scheduling, or something else is happening there. Maybe there's another production that's filming there and they're like, you know what, we need to have this, so we will just wait and push it back because we have so much that's going to be filmed there. Maybe it's a soundstage issue. Maybe there could be so many different issues. Who knows? But the excuse of needing to actually have overcast weather, I don't buy it, because it's something that's very easily changed. It's something that's very easily covered up. And when you're already digitally touching every single frame of your show already, I don't buy it. So
I think it's they want I think it's just that they want a little bit of authenticity in there. Not to
Or,
mention, you're going to have less episodes. You're going to have a bigger budget. You're going to have bigger set pieces. So they're going to have to do bigger things that are going to take more time.
well, that's
So
true.
I'm
They're
sure
going to
it's
have more
probably not just
pre-production.
one thing. Right. I'm sure it's not just one thing. I'm sure it's kind of a multitude of things. But, I don't discredit their idea that they want some more wintry weather to shoot in.
I'm not buying that excuse. Or are they giving George R. R. Martin a bigger window for him to get his shit together and get that book out there?
No, definitely not. No,
That's
actually, that's 100% not the case anymore.
no,
Today, for those of you guys who don't know, we're actually recording shortly after Game of Thrones did their Comic-Con panel,
which I have not heard anything
and
about. So this will be news to me.
Benioff and Weiss talked about their meeting with George R. R. Martin, where they kind of did the character outline, and that's now like I think 2 or 3 years ago, and they haven't really gone back and adjusted since. So that's why they're talking about how there's always kind of the idea that Martin could do his own thing because he notoriously says that he's, a gardener and he likes to, let things kind of grow in his garden that he creates. So it leaves the possibility open that he's made several changes that were not part of the outline that he gave Benioff and Weiss 2 to 3 years ago. So they're just off and running on their own now. And they actually, in their panel, they referenced the idea that they still believe that they are acting within the imagination of Martin, but they're not as tied to the book. So I think they're, all systems go. And I think if you have something that has $100 million budget, like Game of Thrones does, at a certain point, you just can't wait around anymore.
Yeah, but what if, George R. R. Martin is finally getting close. He's almost done. Just has to have a couple revisions and editing and whatever. And they're like, you know what? We have everything will be concluded and it'll be, printed and it'll be ready to go this spring. But we don't want it to conflict with the season 7 of the show premiere.
My only thing with that is there's no evidence to suggest it. And I always have this conversation with other book readers, like everybody's like, "Oh, the book is coming, the book is coming," and they said that a year ago.
Yeah, but they've been saying winter's coming for 6 seasons.
The book will be out. The book will be out. The book will be out. We've got no evidence to suggest that this book is coming out anytime soon.
Yeah.
The last we heard was when Martin wrote in January that it wasn't going to be done, and he's not putting any time frame on it. That does not sound like somebody who's close. And I feel like anybody who's talking about how there's rumors that the book's coming out this year, that's just wishful thinking until I hear otherwise. So I am firmly of the mindset that this book is not coming out until he tells us. So I'm not assuming it's coming out this year at all.
Yeah, that was wishful thinking on my part. But yeah, again, I'm still standing firm. I'm not buying the excuse. There's something else at play, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if we will ever know. But yeah, I'm not buying that excuse.
So another thing for season 7, not only will it be shorter, not only will it be later, but they also named the directors for season 7, and there are 4 that have been named. Alan Taylor, who has done episodes of Game of Thrones before, he did the Ned Stark beheading episode in season 1. Jeremy Pottis was going to be back. He did Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken. He also did the Jon Snow resurrection episode this year. He also did the premiere too, the Red Woman. So he did 2 episodes this year. He'll be back. Mark Mylod, he'll be back next season as well. He did The Broken Man and No One. He's kind of the controversial one because a lot of people think that his episodes have kind of been lacking. So he's coming back. And then Matt Shackman, who is best known for his work on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But he has done like episodes of Mad Men before. He's done episodes of Fargo, so he's a proven director. But notoriously missing from this list is Miguel Sapochnik.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting as well. And I was hoping that there was some kind of a good excuse as to why you would not have this amazing Emmy nominated director at your helm for your next, penultimate season. And I was hoping that, maybe he was working on something else, or maybe there was something really, really amazing that he booked that he wasn't able to do it. And I see that he's going to be directing an episode or episodes of, was it Iron Fist, that's going to be coming on Netflix, I think.
Yeah, I think he is doing an Iron Fist, yeah.
But I don't know how that would take up all of his time. That would negate him being able to do Game of Thrones stuff. So who knows what? Who knows why? I'm not sure. But I thought there were some interesting
Also,
choices.
I mean, Sapochnik's name not being on there is the big one. The other name that you don't see on there that you would normally like to see is David Nutter. David Nutter's done some really
Yeah.
great work on Game of Thrones. Michelle McLaren, she's done some really great work on Game of Thrones. Her name not on there either. But I did hear today in the Comic Con panel that Miguel Sapochnik will be back for season 8. So he will be back. Now, I don't know what you can glean from him not being there. Like, could you say it's because there's no big battle sequence planned, or I don't know how if you can read into the story at all. But I know that two of the best episodes, well, maybe three of the best episodes of Game of Thrones were directed by Miguel Sapochnik.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait a year and find out.
Very true. So that's kind of some interesting news there. And again, that'll be in that shortened season 7. You've got 4 directors. They haven't said how many episodes each one is doing, but there will only be 4 directors for 7 episodes. Now, we did also today get a production video that was released, just kind of like a production teaser, indicating that season 7 is going into production. They show a lot of sets and different things that are being constructed for season 7, which is really cool.
It was very cool, and what sounded like some new audio, or possibly some audio that didn't make it into the season, most notably at the very end of the video.
Yes, we get a line from Tyrion.
Welcome home, my queen. So I
Yeah,
don't.
easily a line that could have been used this season, right?
Exactly. I think maybe it was something that was cut for some reason, but it works for next season. Because if they're not even in production yet, why there would be audio existing right now, I'm not sure. So I'm thinking it's something that was cut out for whatever reason. But it worked, and it got me really excited. And I was like, oh no, we have to wait a whole year.
Also, with production video, we did get a little bit of filming news today that came out that I thought was really interesting. About a month or so ago, they had said that one of the locations that they were scouting for season 7 was the Canary Islands, which is really awesome. Canary Islands, kind of off the coast of Africa, have kind of a almost like a Hawaii style feel. So a lot of people speculating what the Canary Islands could represent. The thing about it is it's hard to pin down because the Canary Islands, I mean, it's kind of like Hawaii, where you have a lot of different ecosystems and climates just on one island. So hard to pin down what that one is.
Interesting.
But the most interesting one came out today. And the article is that the Game of Thrones crew is scouting a town, a Roman town, in Santa Ponce, Spain, and it's called the ruins of Italica, and it's an old, like I said, preserved Roman town, and they're scouting it for an action scene, and it has an amphitheater. So this led to all kinds of really cool speculation about what this could be. So if you Google it, you can Google ruins of Italica. And you'll see all kinds of pictures of it. It's an absolutely beautiful location. You can totally see why they want to use it. But when you're speculating about what it could be used for,
I'm shaking, wanting
when
to spew my thoughts.
when you look at it, you might get kind of an Essos vibe, but I don't
No,
think so.
no,
And
I
I assume you
don't
don't think so either.
either.
So,
No,
are you looking at a photo of it?
nope.
Okay.
I'm just listening to your description.
So, what do you think? What jumps out at you? Because it's probably what jumped out at me too.
I want to see the tournament.
Yeah, the
I want to see the
famous
tournament.
tournament of Harrenhal. Yeah, I mean, that would be extraordinarily cool. And if you look at pictures of this place, you could totally see it happening there. Tournament of Harrenhal is one of the kind of seeding incidents for Robert's Rebellion. It's where Rhaegar Targaryen defeated Barristan Selmy in the tournament and rode past his wife and gave the title of the Queen of Love and Beauty to Lyanna Stark instead of his own wife, and that's where all the drama started to kick off. The Rhaegar and Lyanna relationship, whatever that looks like, started there.
I don't know why, but I think I'm more excited about that than I was Tower of Joy. I mean, I know what the Tower of Joy means, and I know what the contents of what happened inside that tower, what that means, and the speculation that went into that. And as far as the tournament goes, there's really no speculation at all. It's, there were a lot of people there. So in the books, we pretty much know what happened, but I don't know why. Just that whole occurrence, that whole scene. I am so excited to see that.
Well, if this is indeed what it's for, I mean, it would be
I
one of
hope
the
so.
it would be one of the biggest scenes that the show's ever done, because when you think about it, you have not just Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark, but you also have Ned Stark is there. You have Robert Baratheon is there. The Mad King is there. All of these pivotal characters from the show's history at a younger point would be
So
involved
cool.
in that scene potentially.
Yeah.
And you also have other stuff too that ties to that, like the Night of the Laughing Tree, which is another really cool bit of backstory in the books. So if you get a chance, look it up. It's called The Ruins of Italica, and take a look. See if you think that's where you could have the Tourney of Harrenhal. It looks like you could absolutely use it for that. They would have to work around some stuff a little bit, but it is a beautiful location. And as soon as I heard the word ruins and action scene, I was like, there it is. Because Harrenhal itself is a ruin.
Oh, I'm looking at pictures now.
Yeah, it's a beautiful location. When you look at just the amphitheater portion itself, it's got that kind of that dirt bottom, so you think, well, this will be Essos clearly, but I don't think so. I don't think we're
No.
going back to Essos next season. I think there are very few. There will be very few incidents in Westeros that will allow for people to like show up at like a fighting tournament. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
This has to be a flashback almost. And the more I look at the picture, the more convinced I am that this is what that's going to be used for. But who knows? I could be way off in that speculation. But I'm thinking that since we learned who Jon's mother was last season, I think we're going to learn more about his actual father this season.
Oh, yeah, completely. And that's one of the things that I think in our predictions episode that I was saying that I wanted to see in season 7. Speaking of season 7 predictions, although should I get into this now?
Sure, if you want to. I didn't have anything else. I was going to go into speculation next, so we can kick it right off.
I think this is more... I don't know if this would be a season 7 or a season 8 thing. I think this would be a season 8 thing. Because I have a feeling that season 7 is really going to focus on the War of Westeros, or whatever it's going to be called. Everybody overthrowing Cersei and Dany coming into town and all that stuff. I think that's what season 7 is going to be about. I think season 8 is really going to be the War of the North, the battle of man versus I almost said man versus food. That's what I'm thinking of because I haven't had dinner yet. Man versus the White Walkers.
Adam Richman hosting.
Let me just take a moment. Delicious drink of water that man is. Yeah, man versus the White Walkers and everything. I think that's going to be season 8, and I just got into thinking, and I was doing a little bit of research, and I was reading into the prophecy of Azor Ahai, who now people are really thinking that Jon Snow is Azor Ahai. So if you don't read the books or you don't want to be spoiled, you might not want to listen to what I'm going to say. And if you are a book reader, you might think I'm crazy, but that's okay. So I was reading into the prophecy of Azor Ahai because I was trying to think of, okay, what's the end game going to be? What is this final end game? And the only, clue that we have received from George R.R. Martin, which I don't want to hear anymore about what the end game could possibly be, but the only clue that we have gotten from him or that we've received is that he says it's going to be bittersweet. And I'm trying to think what could be bittersweet. I don't know what could be bittersweet. If they win over the White Walkers, that's great. I don't understand how that could be bittersweet. Even if they decide to no longer have an Iron Throne. I know that was a prediction or something that we talked about before, that Westeros could kind of break up into their own little states or something, or regions, and have their own kings, and there's no one, throne to rule them all, so to speak. And I'm like, well, that's not really...
Getting your fantasy mixed up.
I am. And I'm like, but that's not really bittersweet. So what is it that could happen that could be bittersweet? So I was reading through the prophecy, and I was trying to think of what we're standing at right now. What do we have that's about to happen? And, Dany, she's coming over, and she, has it set that she's going to have to marry. And, that's why she left, what's his face? Her boy toy behind. I already forgot his name. That's terrible. But, she knows she's going to have to marry for an alliance or something. And, we talked about who could be some of the prospective marriages for her. And overwhelmingly, a lot of people are saying, and I think so too, that it could be Jon Snow. And yes, we just found out.
There's not a lot of single dudes up there.
There's not. And then a lot of them that are single, they're not really going to buy or anything. I mean, and I don't mean like with cash, but I mean, it's not going to give her any kind of an alliance or any kind of anything. But, we have a King of the North that was just proclaimed. And the Targaryens already have a history of, keeping things within their own line. So Jon Snow, we just found out that he's part Targaryen. So in essence, they are, she's his aunt. He's her nephew. So they are related, but they still could marry and form an alliance.
And conceivably, they wouldn't know necessarily yet that they're related.
True. But I have a feeling that there may be some... I mean, now granted, she's not a redhead, and he seems to have a preference for redheads, but they will probably feel some kind of connection. They have that tie, and they're not going to be aware of why that is. So there may be some kind of a connection there. And I would love to see the two of them meet, but there could actually be some kind of a romance or some kind of a connection or something between the two of them. So I was reading about Azor Ahai, and
yes.
So and please fill me in and correct me because I'm not completely versed on this. And I was just reading a couple wiki paragraphs. So Azor Ahai, part of the prophecy or part of the qualifications to be Azor Ahai, one of them is that they have to sacrifice their love or something. They had to make a great sacrifice, and Azor Ahai sacrificed his love. Nissa is her name. Such a weird name, but he plunged his heart, or his sword, into her heart, and that ignited the sword, or it forged the sword, and that then became Lightbringer. Is that right? Am I right?
Yeah, so let me give
Okay.
you let me give to our non-book reading audience that still wants to listen to some book spoilery kind of stuff.
Please,
So
thank you.
let me just start by saying Azor Ahai is a real person. Well, real in the universe of the books. He's kind of this like mythical character. He's referenced in a lot of different regions across, Westeros, Nessos, and all that stuff. So basically, this guy, Azor Ahai, was chosen to kind of fight against the others, the White Walkers, right? And he needed to have a hero sword in order to do it. So he goes ahead and he starts creating his sword. He works for 30 days, but when he went to temper the sword in water, the sword broke. So he had to start over. So the second time, it took him 50 days to make this sword, right? And made it even better than the first time he made it. This time, to temper it, he didn't put it in water. He plunged it into the heart of a lion, but it shattered again. Third time he goes to make the sword. This time he works for 100 days. And instead of water, instead of a lion, he calls for Nissa. She bares her breast to him, and he drives the sword into her heart. And her, soul kind of merges into the blade, and it creates what's called Lightbringer, the flaming sword of the hero.
So,
which is what kind of leads him to, defeat the others during the long night. And the prophecy is that this character, this Azor Ahai, will be reborn.
So which leads me to my crazy theory. My endgame theory. So we have Sam that's over in the Citadel. He's going to be learning. He's going to be reading. He's going to try and get as much information as he can. And I think he's going to end up looking into this prophecy of Azor Ahai. Or it could be another Red Priestess or somebody that relays this information. But I think something is going to happen where we have a combination of Jon and Dany. And I think that in order to defeat the White Walkers, that something is going to happen, or he learns that he's going to have to do this, and we're going to see a recreation of that scene, and it's going to be Dany who bares her chest, who bares her breasts, and it's going to be Jon who has to drive a sword into her chest, essentially killing her, but yet saving the day. And then he's got Lightbringer, and then he's going to be able to kill all the White Walkers and save Westeros, and it's a bittersweet ending, and I think that's how it's going to end. Thank you.
So I think you definitely have some evidence in there that supports what it is you're talking about. There is kind of a prophecy that goes that ties to Azor Ahai and the rebirth, where it has some very specific points to it, and it talks about how this reborn Azor Ahai will be born amidst salt and smoke, under a bleeding star, and how they'll, forge Lightbringer. And Melisandre thought that was going to be Stannis. But if you've watched this season, you hear them referring to the prince who was promised. That's also a reference to Azor Ahai. Dany is referenced as being the one who was promised, and Jon is referenced as being the prince who was promised. So you definitely have followers of this religion that love this prophecy that have sided with different people as this reborn hero. So I think you're right in that their fates are definitely intertwined.
I do, and I know that in some theories where people were, trying to see what does Jon fit in, all of these qualifications, and what does Dany fit in all of these qualifications, and a lot of them, people said, Ygritte was Jon's Nissa, and, she was sacrificed, she was killed, but he didn't sacrifice her. She was killed in front of him, but he didn't sacrifice her. It was fucking Ollie that killed her. And yeah, it was his love, from what we know, but he did not sacrifice her. So I don't see that as being, him filling that qualification of, this prophecy. And with Dany, people think that it was, Khal Drogo, was her love. And, that fits her into that part of the prophecy. But, again, I was trying to think of what could be a bittersweet end to everything. And that would be incredibly bittersweet to have that happen between the two of them.
Yeah, there's also some other like great evidence that was shown in both the show and in the books that kind of supports this Jon Snow as Azor Ahai thing. And it was in season 4, episode 10, where Melisandre first sees Jon through the flames. Well, there's actually a corresponding thing that happens in the books where Melisandre is talking, and she talks about how she's, praying to R'hllor for a glimpse of Azor Ahai, but she sees only snow, and it's not meant to be snow in terms of winter snowfall. It's like capital S snow, as in Jon Snow.
Yeah, that's a good one. And of course, again, because the entire series is not called Game of Thrones, the entire series is called A Song of Ice and Fire. And some people could say, and, have said, well, ice is Jon Snow and the fire is Dany. Well, no, we've just seen that Jon Snow is part Stark, part Targaryen. So he is quite literally the embodiment of ice and fire. This is his story. It's not Dany's story. She's a big part of the story, but it's not her story. I think this whole story is about Jon, and it's going to be his story of being able to save all of Westeros and being the prince that was promised. This is all about him, and I think Dany's a big part of that story. And I think she's going to be the Nissa Nissa, and she's going to be the bittersweet end, and Jon's triumph. She will sacrifice herself. He will ram his sword into her.
Yeah.
And I'm going to watch it. I need to go take a shower.
The red sword of heroes going all up into Dany in her bosom. So, with this theory, I love the idea that Jon and Dany are linked in this way, and the show has told us for years now, just by watching it, they have parallel stories in a way. They both were kind of outcast. Dany sent to the far corner of the world. Jon sent up, up into a giant ice castle in the northern part of the world. When they were exiled in Jon's was a chosen exile because he chose to go to the Night's Watch, but in their exile, they were kind of in these diminished roles. They rose to power. They fell in love. Their lovers died. Yeah. They found themselves in position of dealing with this newly acquired power. They both had threats to their power from within. They both have had to make decisions about executing people. Even in this season, we see Jon dealing with Melisandre killing Shireen. I would be willing to bet that in season 7, we see Dany have to deal with the Sand Snakes having killed Tyrion's niece. Being put in that similar situation where you have this like internal strife, this internal wrong that needs to be corrected.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a good theory.
Yeah, the show's been doing it the entire time. There's even in season 5. Dany has Dario cut somebody's head off. A couple episodes later, Jon has to cut somebody's head off. Their stories have been mirror images of each other, kind of pushing them to this point. And, it's really interesting now as we're looking into season 7, where you've got Cersei in the middle, Jon in the north, and Dany approaching from maybe the south, that the most natural alliance for Dany is Jon Snow, who is in fact her nephew, who is also friends with Tyrion,
Yeah.
and then Jon's sister is Tyrion's wife in a sense. So there are some natural alliances there that can be formed.
But I mean, how amazing would it be to see her, whatever it is that brings this about, that this has to happen, that she has to give herself up. They've come together, they formed an alliance, and this is the only way that's going to, forge this sword that's going to be able to kill the Night's King or whatever it is. And she bares her chest, and he takes the sword and plunges it into her heart, and she is the dragon and she is fire, and his sword ignites and is on fire. That's going to be so cool. And I'm predicting it. I'm stamping it. Done. I think this is what's going to happen. This is what should happen.
Nice. My only thing about prophecy is they tend to not go for like the literal fulfillment of it. So like, I mean, you could probably work something very similar in there. I think you're right in the sense that one of them will not make it out alive, Dany or Jon. One of them won't make it out alive. And my money is on the fact that Dany will be the one that doesn't make it out of this series alive, because she's kind of a mystical person and she has this kind of conqueror's mentality. Conquerors never survive to be rulers. It's just not the way it works.
Yeah.
And Dario even said, like, you're not made to rule, you're made to conquer. Well, what happens when you've conquered everything?
Yeah. That's when she's been at her weakest, after she conquered and she's just kind of sitting on the throne. That's not her thing. And it wasn't exciting to watch either.
There's a lot of fun stuff out there with the Azor Ahai thing. And I think one of the really cool bits of show evidence that we got for Jon is I mentioned it in our episode 10 recap, is the Born Under a Bleeding Star. When we see that Tower of Joy scene in episode 10, we see Ned rest Dawn up against the bed, a sword that was covered in blood, a sword that's forged from a fallen meteor. So it's literally a bleeding star at the end of the bed.
Oh, yeah, and that camera frame, I mean, the way the camera lingers on it, the way it's framed right there in the scene, that was very purposeful.
I'm starting to try to piece together theories about the Red God and how I think it might end up proving in the end to be some sort of like science or manipulation of time that could be behind the actions of the Red God. I feel like there's just more to it than there's just this mystical Red God. I feel like there's an unanswered question out there. Like, why is that the one deity that has measurable power? Well, I mean, I guess the old gods too, because you have the Weirwood network and things like that. But even that feels more indigenous and, of nature than it does the kind of magic that's tied to R'hllor.
Yeah, I don't know. There are some things that I don't feel that need to be explained. I don't feel any need to have the old gods and children of the forest or, any of that explained. I don't even think we needed to see how the White Walkers were created by the children of the forest. Unless it's going to come into play again later. I don't know, but I'm of the peace of mind that, less is more sometimes, and you don't need to see everything.
Yeah, but what I liked about seeing how the White Walkers were made is that it adds a level of moral complexity to the Children of the Forest, who you think of as these like indigenous, like wholly good creatures. They're almost like more kind of like native versions of hobbits, where they're, seemingly like gentle and of nature and kind of, relatively harmless, but they themselves, in an effort for their own defense, created this monster that grew out of control. And it's so indicative of politics, both currently and for generations ago. And I like seeing that kind of moral complexity added to it, because I think that's part of the wheelhouse of Game of Thrones. Not every villain is 100% evil, and not every hero is 100% good.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
I so easily bend. Like, yeah, you're right. That's
That was
good.
easy.
Yep.
But I think there's a lot of really cool stuff about Azor Ahai because there are some things that tie to Dany as well.
Yeah. Oh, there are. There's and in fact, we've mentioned a couple podcasts and YouTubers out there, but Alt Shift X, as far as his explanation of things, especially his Azor Ahai video, is one of the best. And
He
he
works
really
Tyrion into that one, doesn't he?
he works almost everybody. He explores every theory, every possibility. He even has a sole video on its own to try and work through how Sir Pounce could possibly be Azor Ahai, and it's quite funny. And it's worth checking out if you want to laugh. But no, he goes and looks at every angle and gives each theory its moment and really explores it. And even Sir Bounce, he really does on the pros and the cons. So I think his is definitely the one to go. And if you're only going to watch one, go and watch his. Really good. But the Sir Pounce is a separate video. It's its own one.
All right. Anything else on your Nissa Nissa equals Dany theory that you wanted to put out there?
No, I'm just proud of myself that I came up with a theory and that I haven't seen anywhere else. I haven't really done any research to see if anybody else thought of it. I can't imagine that somebody else wouldn't have thought of it because I don't think it's anything too revolutionary. So if you are aware of somebody else who has also come up with this theory, I would love to hear about it because I would like to go and read it to see if there's some parallels in there or they may have thought it out better than I did. But I haven't seen it. I haven't heard of it, and I came up with that with my own brain, and I'm kind of proud of it, and I think it's going to happen.
I've seen some different variations of the Azor Ahai theory with Jon as Azor Ahai. There are some that are kind of like sad. There was one going around during this season that it would be Melisandre who, he would, plunge his sword into her heart to execute her, and that would like give him like this magical, Lightbringer sword that he would have. But I've also heard Arya mentioned as a Nissa Nissa stand-in possibly, and maybe unbeknownst to Jon, because it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic love, right? It could be the love that he has for his sister.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I still think that Jon and Dany are going to come together and, maybe they do have some kind of a marriage or something, and they could have a love for each other because they find out that they're related. It can be a marriage of alliance. It doesn't have to be a romantical thing. I just wanted to add another level into it, but no, I mean, they could have an affection or a familiar love of each other that's not romantic, but yet I still am clinging to what George R.R. Martin said. It was that it was going to be a bittersweet end, and I think that would be perfect because I can't see that both Dany and Jon would come out of this together. I think that would be the perfect bittersweet thing. I really, really do.
So one more thing that I did want to mention, because one of the things that I've always been kind of interested in the Azor Ahai prophecy is that it could be more than one character that fulfills the role. And I actually think it could potentially be 3 characters. I think it could be Jon, Dany, and Tyrion that combined are Azor Ahai.
Right.
Because they all meet different aspects. But how I did that whole comparison on Jon's story and Dany's story, look at Tyrion's story. Also killed somebody that he loved. Also an outcast in his family. After he became Hand of the King, he was kind of an outcast after that because he had to then take a back seat when his father took over as Hand, and he really became nothing again.
Yeah.
Tyrion fell from power. So like Dany had to fly off on Drogon, gets captured by the Dothraki. She fell from power. Jon gets murdered. He fell from power. Tyrion gets sold as a slave with Jorah. He fell from power. And yet now, look at all three of those characters.
That's true.
They've all regained their power.
Yeah.
Well, all have had to kill a lover. All, well,
didn't all of their mothers die in childbirth?
All their mothers, that's the biggest one of all their mothers died in childbirth.
Yep. The dragon has 3 heads, they say. So, yeah, I know that that's a theory. I know that there's a theory out there that Tyrion could possibly be a Targaryen as well. I like that theory. I think that would be really cool if that one kind of comes about as well. Oh man, I think the ending of this show is going to be bittersweet because not just on its content, but the fact that I am so into this show, more so now than I ever have been. And it's so bittersweet to think that we only have a few episodes left with each of these characters. And I'm going to be really, really sad to see it go. And it's going to be one of those things that as the episodes start going, it's like, you're getting closer and closer to the end. And it's like, oh, I don't want the next episode to come out yet, but I really want it to come out because I want to know what happens. But then that means we're closer to the end. And, man, I am so ready, but then I am not ready.
I totally understand. And it'll probably be just a short season 8 also, and but I have a feeling though HBO will not be done with the George R.R. Martin universe.
Oh, I hope not.
You can't be this successful and not have people, rating your other work and looking to do other adaptations. And also something that happened in the most recent weeks since our last Game of Thrones related episode is that Benioff and Weiss gave an interview where they talked about how they're not focused on any other adaptations of Martin material as of right now. But they did not shut the door on the idea at all. They didn't say, no, this is it, we're done, screw it.
They're holding it.
They basically said, we haven't focused on it yet.
Did you not get what I just said?
Yes, I got it.
Dang it, you didn't even acknowledge it. That was good.
Sorry.
Oh, you're horrible at support sometimes.
Well, no, sometimes by moving on, it's the best support.
Really?
I think so.
Really? That's not what they said in my improv class. That's horrible.
Sometimes when you're playing it straight, you got to get from point A to point B.
Okay.
I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about anymore.
I don't either. That's why I'm just letting it go. I am employing your method of support. I'm just letting it go. It's
going to be a long year, folks. It's going to be a long year.
Oh, man.
So now you know what we think, but as always, we want to know what you think. So hit us up on Twitter and Facebook at NerdFlixChill and let us know your thoughts. Like Carrie said at the top, leave us a review if you like us. And if you have friends that you like to talk about nerdy stuff with, let them know that we exist too, because we'd love to have them part of our Nerdflix and Chill community. So, until next time, everybody,